I used to think there was no hope of turning this boring kitchen into the cozy cottage of my dreams, especially as a renter. Every time I walked through it, I replayed the voices I'd heard so many times online. It's temporary, it won't last, and what a waste of money. But over time, something shifted. I stopped seeing this space as something to endure, but rather a blank slate, quietly waiting to be cared for. So today, I want to bring you along as I turn this kitchen into something warm, cozy, and cottage-like, using what I can find, thrift, and make work right where I am. So let's go ahead and get started. First up was the area I struggled with the most to make renter-friendly, and that is the backsplash. This was the one spot I couldn't stop overthinking. I wanted it to feel cottagey, but yet still be renter-friendly. And everything I tried to picture either felt too permanent or too expensive. I originally dreamed of beadboard backsplash, but when I couldn't find anything peel and stick, I knew I'd have to try something different. So instead, I decided to do a faux vertical shiplap using just a basic pencil. To create it, I drew vertical lines up and down the wall, then softened and thickened each one by dragging the white eraser tip over the pencil. For something that's literally just pencil lines, I think that this actually turned out so good. And honestly, I think it ended up being even more renter-friendly than anything I could have bought, as it all comes off with a simple magic eraser. Next up were the countertops, and this was the part of the project that scared me the most. This is where I heard the most negativity online. I remember reading comment after comment about how ridiculous it is to put peel and stick counters in a kitchen, arguably the messiest room in the house. And I'll be honest, I found myself agreeing with those comments. We have a single sink, we wash dishes by hand every single day. I kept thinking, how could this possibly hold up? Well, it's almost been a year since I installed them, and I'll show you how they've been holding up in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about the install itself, because I know there are so many horror story reviews out there. There was definitely a learning curve, and some things I could only figure out through trial and error, and of course, lots and lots of patience. I did end up running into two problem areas. The first was right here. No matter how many times I smoothed these air bubbles, they just kept coming back. Now the second issue I had was this raw edge, though this wasn't an issue with the contact paper itself, but rather with the unfinished edge of my kitchen unit. I tried wrapping it and securing it with hot glue, and while it isn't perfect, I decided to live with it. As for the bubbling on top, I did redo a few sections, but eventually I was honestly running out of steam, and I knew this area would eventually be layered with thrifted pieces and everyday items, which I'll show you in just a bit, just after the renovations are done. Next up, I gave the kitchen cabinets a fresh coat of paint. As I got going, I felt these little bursts of excitement that were then quickly followed up by doubt. I kept wondering if I'd picked the wrong color, and whether this was all going to look cohesive in the end. This was definitely one of those moments where I wouldn't really know if it worked out until everything else was finished. Before signing the lease to this townhouse, I did make sure painting was allowed. As a creative and someone who loves decorating, as silly as this may sound, I knew I couldn't fully settle into a home where the colors didn't feel quite right, which in turn made choosing this paint feel like a bit more of a pressure-filled decision. Now, the last part of this renovation did not go according to plan. I was hoping to swap out the hardware for some pretty brass handles, but I hit a roadblock. And when I say this rental is cheap, I really mean it. These cabinets feel like they're straight out of the 70s, and the hardware is actually wood. Not only is it screwed in, but it's also glued, which meant there was absolutely no way these handles were coming off, so I had to work with what I had. I took a trip to the craft store and wandered through the paint aisles until I found something that might work. It wasn't what I originally planned, but it would have to do. It ended up taking a painstaking 5 coats per handle. And if you think I'm crazy for using this basic acrylic craft paint on the kitchen hardware, just wait until you see how it's held up. Now that the renovation phase of this project is done, I want to give you a quick update on how everything has held up over the last 10 months, as well as a cost breakdown. So the backsplash has been one of my favorite additions and has really held up quite well. I haven't touched it since I first installed it. It adds so much character and really gives that cottage feel. And of course, the best part of this, it was completely free. The paint, I feel, is the perfect neutral tone. There were just a few high traffic spots that needed a touch up, but nothing that a little leftover paint couldn't cure. I originally bought this paint for $26 and I still have some leftovers as well. The contact paper, which I was most nervous about, has also held up really well. I wasn't sure what to expect, but it surprisingly takes sourdough kneading and the messy kitchen sink really well. I was worried about it peeling up, but it is sealed well and we've had no water damage thanks to the caulking around the sink. The only damage it has taken, however, is a few imprints of the slow cooker feet kind of embedded on top of it. But once we figured out what was going on, we now put our slow cooker on a cooking board to create a barrier to prevent any melting. As far as cost goes here, the contact paper was $40 and the caulking was $10. Surprisingly, the acrylic handles have held up the best, not even a scratched or scuffed paint in sight. I bought this paint from the craft store for $4, bringing the renovation phase of this project to just $80. And now that the bones of the kitchen are done, it's time to get to the fun part, adding decor and thrifted pieces to make it truly feel more like home. Over the past 10 months, I've slowly been working away at finding the perfect pieces to make this space feel like my dream cottage, while also keeping it functional. I know there are so many crazy thrift haul videos out there of people finding everything in one day, but for me, thrifting feels like an art. It takes time to find treasures like this, and I love the process of hunting and waiting for the right pieces to come along. So even as I show you these thrifts today, there are still a few gaps to fill. But for now, I'm excited to show you what I've found so far and how I've styled it all. So first up in this space, I thrifted this adorable little basket with a little fabric lining in it for $5.99, and here I like to keep it practical. This is where I just store my spices in a bit more of a cute way. Next, I thrifted this glass flower container, which I absolutely love the old style of. It reminds me of something from Little House on the Prairie or Dr. Quinn, but here we use a lot of oats, so that's what I like to keep stored readily available on my counter. Next is this cute little neutral glass container that I thrifted some faux eucalyptus, and I think is the perfect match to add a little greenery and a little bit of beauty to this little kitchen counter. I absolutely love the color of old medicine jars, so when I saw this soap dispenser at the thrift store, I could not resist. Now this item wasn't thrifted, but it was gifted, and I feel like it makes this space so much cozier, and it is a little candle warmer. Though I no longer use the candle portion at the top, I do love the cozy lighting that it brings to this space. One thing I love about decorating in the kitchen is how you can use everyday items to decorate. And so this is just a homemade herbal remedy I'm working on. It's just honey and garlic that I like to keep out on my counter so I don't forget about it. And then here I'm just spicing it up by adding a cute homemade jar topper to it, and I think it looks absolutely adorable, like it has its own little bonnet on. Some thrifts definitely seem like they take longer to find, and this cutting board was one of those for me, but it was worth the wait. I love how this space is coming along and how it just welcomes me as I round the corner on into my kitchen, ready for a day of baking or cooking. Now, of course, decorating in the kitchen can't just be all decorations. We have to keep it functional. So here are just a few everyday items we use all the time, like our drying rack, pans, and cutting boards. Next up, I am tackling above the stove. Here I thrifted this golden frame, which I love, though I didn't love the print, so I just swapped it out with an Etsy print, and I'm so happy with how that turned out. As a little decoration, I thrifted this cute little teapot, and I just have some dried plants that I gathered from outside and gathered into this little teapot, and I love how it matches my picture frame perfectly. Now, this little jar was not thrifted, but it is that perfect medicine jar color. It's just a recycled yeast jar that I put a little faux plant in. This candle, while it wasn't thrifted, it was rescued before going to the thrift store, and I love the old-fashioned style of it. This wooden peg rack was a Christmas gift from my father, who made it, which I absolutely love, but I will say this is a space I'm still working on to gather some more pieces and really create the top of my stove. But for now, here's a little thrift I found, and I put a little bit of faux greenery in it to help spruce the space up a bit more. I love how this little corner is coming along and just the coziness it gives off as I'm standing here at the stove cooking food for my family. Next up is this tiny little corner between my stove and the fridge. Here we keep it pretty practical. This little guy I got on clearance, and that's where we keep our salt, pepper, cinnamon, and then usually we have our paper towels on the top of it as well, but we're currently out. Another thing I like to do when thrifting is if I can't find the perfect item, I'll have like something as a placeholder to stand in its gap. So I would love to get a crock here, but I have not come across one yet. So in the meantime, I'm just using this white canister. Over this past year, one thing I have learned to start kind of collecting and gathering at the thrift store is cute baskets. And this is something I learned from another channel called She Holds Dearly, and just what a great hack it is to contain some of the not so pretty items in our kitchen. So here I'm using this massive basket and putting our water jugs in them to help kind of conceal them and make it a little bit more cohesive. Then I also have this other brown basket, which I love about this one is that it's like on a hinge and open and closes to keep things more so concealed. This is where we store our dog treats, and then just another cute little basket to add some greenery to the top of the fridge. Now, when I saw this like accordion peg rack at the thrift store, I knew I had to bring it home, but I have such a hard time committing to nailing nails in the wall and knowing where to put things. But instead, I decided to hot glue magnets to it and use it on the side of my fridge to hold a few decorations like this homemade embroidery and this thrifted napkin, which I love how it turns this bare, boring side of our fridge into something a bit cozier. The fridge is definitely still a work in progress. I have some ideas for like making magnet frames, but we're not quite there yet. As I reflect on this space, to me it's so much more than making a boring rental beautiful. To me, this is where my life happens. When I first moved into this rental, I was working a 9-to-5, hurrying through life, and I honestly didn't have time to truly make it feel like mine. But now I'm a full-time stay-at-home mom, and I'm here all day. So making this space feel beautiful, cozy, and lived in has become more important, more so now than ever. I still do dream of owning a home one day, but I don't want to miss the present waiting for the future. I don't want to live in a boring rental for years and look back wishing I'd made it feel like home while I had the chance. So for me, this isn't just decorating, it's creating memories. It's building the childhood I want for my son. It's creating the dream life I want as a mom. It's being grateful for what God has given us in this season, and it's choosing joy in the here and now. Friend, I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you found some inspiration and encouragement, and if you're interested in more cozy homemaking, intentional motherhood, and budget thrifting, I'd love to have you stick around and subscribe. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next time.